Have you ever experienced something so crippling in your life that has made you feel broken? I have. Are you someone who has a giving heart but is struggling to feel good themselves? Are you consistently putting your needs aside to take care of everyone else? If so, you're not alone. Giving starts with giving to yourself so that you are able to give of yourself to other people. Isn't it time you took back control and discovered what makes you tick? Join me in my journey and find out how you can feel better about yourself, live your best life, and share that with others. Thinking of yourself, it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. I'm Nelia, and this is the Giving Starts With You podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Giving Starts With You podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again today. And for supporting the message on this show. You know, we have lots of wonderful guests with so many impactful things to say and to teach. And they come on here and they trust me with the show. And I cannot say enough about those people. And Chris has become my friend. So Chris is just an amazing, inspiring gentleman who's doing crazy things. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great, doing fantastic. Thanks for that intro. Yeah, doing great. And congratulations on the show. Keeping it going, keeping it rocking, keeping the inspiration and encouragement. The guests have just been, I listen to it, folks. I listen to it every week. It's usually during my workouts is when I listen to podcasts. And so every Monday, Thursday, I know I get to hear Nelia and I get to hear her guest. And then of course her solo episodes are always so uplifting, encouraging, and just when we were talking before we started here, I made the comment, and I truly mean this about Nelia and everyone you've had on, and the community that you've built is incredible. People do incredible things, and that's what we've got to do to keep this world going. So,
oh, Chris, you always have so many nice things and supportive things to say. Thank you. So I'm just going to let you guys know a little bit more about Chris. Chris is the co-founder of Eagle Fire Enrichment. Which is, okay, we need to talk about this. So he is also a husband, a father of three, a leadership coach, an inspirational speaker, and a retired firefighter. Okay, so he's amazing already, right? Well, Chris has been on the show before. If you haven't heard his episode is episode 32. So he was one of my very first guests. So grateful that he's back. And his episode back then was why you should never use the word can't. So very powerful. If you haven't heard it, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it. Chris uses the word can't and why can't never did. So a little bit about Chris. At the age of 10, Chris was told by his dad and his stepmother that he wasn't expected to succeed in life and that he wouldn't amount to anything. These are tough words for anybody to hear. But even as a young boy, he did not believe this. He spoke candidly in our last episode about his life, his obstacles, and all the things that he has conquered. But despite him feeling rejected when someone gave him an identity that he wasn't worth it, Chris has soared like an eagle. And honestly, his personality, I mean, look at him. You can see his heart right through the screen. He is such a giving gentleman. And today, I'm excited because we're going to be talking about something that Chris and I both, it really means a lot to us. And it's about giving. So I know that Chris is going to talk to us a little bit about who he is and about some of the things that he's experienced through his life as well through giving. So Chris, I'm excited. Let's get started and take it away, my friend. This is you.
Yeah. So giving, when we can give, a lot of people think giving is just giving back. I just forgot the name of the movie, but it was called Pay It Forward, if I remember right. And it started with a young person who wanted to create, and if I remember right, this is based on a true story, but wanted to create opportunities where it wasn't just about giving back. See, when I got my Eagle Scout, you're given this charge. There's a challenge, a charge, and an oath. And all of them center upon this understanding of there's the old quote, when given much, much must be given.
Love that.
But when it starts with you, it doesn't always have to be just because I was given something, I have to give back. So many times I feel like we get trapped in this vortex of, oh, well, if someone gave me something, I have to give back. And then it becomes this forced attitude that loses its authenticity. And if we are truly vulnerable in life and in what we do and in what we create and in what we can give, I feel like the world does truly become this brighter place. When I was given that charge as the Eagle Scout, I was asked a few years later why I was still involved in the Boy Scouts. Oh, you got your Eagle, you're 18, you don't have to do this. I said, you know what? I was given a lot, but I will never give enough back.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is I don't want to get trapped in that vortex of I have to do this instead of I get to do this.
I
Because
love
when
that.
we have to do it and we feel forced, yeah, we get caught in just there's no joy in it. And in giving, there has to be joy. When it's joyful giving, more people want to get involved, more opportunities get created, more hearts are found because it's truly authentic, it's truly vulnerable. When I look at like your son, folks, if this is the first time you're hearing this, go back and listen to the episode with her son, because you hear the heart of a young man on this amazing trip in an amazing place with amazing people, which is all around the world, but this is specifically in Guatemala. And he just said, Mom, I think we need to do more. I raise my kids with that same attitude. And when I coach people, especially leaders are givers. Okay, there's so many definitions of a leader, but when you give as a leader, you are not just creating a following, you are creating other leaders. And so when it's from the heart, when it's authentic, even if you don't have the title, rank, or position, which you don't need, you don't have to have that to be a leader. Because as a giver, when you give of yourself wholeheartedly, you're fulfilling what Christ called us to do. Go out and make disciples. Love one another. Love God, love others. It's just that's there we go. It's love. Giving is love. And when we have that for one another, when we have that for people who don't normally get that, it changes the world. And it doesn't, the reason why I don't want to get caught in this I have to vortex trap is because your giving doesn't have to have a specific title. Okay. It doesn't have to just be in money. I haven't always had the money to give.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? God blessed me with a pair of legs and a pair of hands and arms that I could do a lot of work with, which we can talk more about that here in a little bit. God has gifted me the ability to talk and speak life into people. The stuff I do on my social media, I just do it because I wake up that day and go, I feel like this is what needs to be said. This is what God has called me to tell everyone. And I don't do that because I feel like I have to or to necessarily promote myself. It's just because I've had random people who, quite honestly, I didn't know were following me or didn't remember that we are, specifically friends on Facebook. Obviously, we're friends, but I never can remember who all has it, who doesn't. I've had people randomly come to us, hey, you remember what you said 2 weeks ago? Refresh my memory. And, this really just like my day was just done. I was a wreck and I listened to your video at 10 o'clock in the morning. Changed everything. And it's like, okay, so that's simple and that's free. That's free for me. That's free for you. because it's just giving. I know other people who aren't able because they're so busy working, they're not able to just go and do a project or a soup kitchen day or help rebuild a park, but they have the money. And so they write a check, but they do it from the heart. They're not doing it because they have to. I've seen random people go, hey, this is back when I was running my old youth group. We had a need, and I had it was an elderly couple who they wanted to be able to go on the mission trip with us, couldn't go, and they said, we want to do something. What can we do to help? Now, keep in mind, they had already been to all our fundraisers. They had already bought the different things that we sold and been to our dinners and things like that. And I said, I've got two kids who they can't financially afford. We're trying to get the scholarship and everything else. They said, done, done. And they didn't need a thank you card. They didn't need to be announced at the front of the church. They didn't want to. We still wrote them a thank you card anyways, but I had two kids who we were really trying to figure out because budgets were tight everywhere, even within, my youth group account. We were trying to figure it out. Next thing I know, they wrote a check for both kids to get to go.
Change their life completely.
Changed their life. And then they got to do something
Family.
like they had never been out of our city here. They'd never been out of the city. And here I got to take them to a whole nother state.
Oh, wow.
Got to take them to restaurants they would have never been able to go to and places that they'd get to see and things like that, because normally they wouldn't have got to do that. So
It opens up so many things. Imagination. It opens up so many opportunities for them. That's incredible. I love that story. I love that you're talking about giving genuinely, because there's so many, when you don't give, when you give because you feel like you have to, so many things go wrong, like the people that you're helping, they know it, they sense it. It doesn't make them feel like you care about them. It doesn't make them feel that your heart is in the right place. And maybe they don't even want to accept it because they know it's not coming from the right place. And you're right. I think the biggest thing you can give is your time. People associate giving with money, and it's so not about money.
no,
You can create a project and get fundraising from people who have the money to give. But somebody
exactly.
has to come up with the idea. Somebody has to want to do it. Roll up your sleeves and get it done. Can't never did, right, Chris?
That's exactly right. And when we have that attitude, it becomes an attitude of gratitude.
Mm.
When you joyfully give, when it's authentic and vulnerable, you are more fulfilled. You truly see and know the good that comes with that. And so what do we do now? Well, we turn the good into great. Greatness will come in this.
I love
It
talking.
always does.
I just love
It
it.
it builds pressure. Well, your ukulele project. I have a friend of mine at church who plays the ukulele, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I forgot until recently, our church actually goes to Guatemala for a different project.
Awesome.
And I was like, okay, there's something to this. I need to figure it out. Well, I always turn the ukulele up because I love it. I love that instrument. I don't know, like after I saw your project and everything, I was like, okay, I need to
Oh,
need
you're
to
so,
connect more of this.
and it's
But
portable.
ironically enough, the person who plays it, I had it cranked up that day because I run the sound for our youth group praise band, and we joke that it doesn't always get turned up. And she's like, "I love it when you're back there." Well, then there was a photo on Facebook, and then I photoshopped it because it showed like something else being turned way up. So I hand wrote ukulele over it and taped it over it and sent it to everybody, and they laughed. Well, then we got to talking. I said, "Hey," I said, just out of curiosity, I said, "I've got a friend of mine, being Nelia." I said, "Have you ever heard the ukulele project?" She looked at me. She goes, "Oh my gosh, I love that project.
Wow.
This is here in Kansas." She's like, "Yeah, I've heard of it. It's in Guatemala." I was like, I was on her
Oh my God, that
podcast.
touches my heart so much. You're
Yeah, and so I got her our episode, and haven't this was fairly recently, and I've been gone, so I haven't really had a chance to reconnect with her on everything. But it's the simplicity of seeing your joy through Facebook and Instagram with your travel, live, give um, project and the ukulele project, and hearing your son's passion in that, and then being able to express that myself. And then for someone else who is just one of the most radiant people on planet Earth, go, I know all about that.
Oh,
Like
that's
that shrinks our world down to a level where we can all get together. You know, if someone hears, oh, Guatemala, I don't know if I could travel there. I don't know, and I just don't have the money and things like that. Okay, so offer prayers, offer support, share it on Facebook,
mm.
talk to your friends about it. Just because you can't doesn't mean someone else can't. So ultimately, what does that say?
And
We can. We are connected in such a way in this world and in this society that it is easier to give than we've ever realized. But we have to open ourselves up to that opportunity.
and even just come up with your own idea. Like the reason why I came up with that project was because music saved my life.
Mm,
Music and giving to others. So I built something around that idea. I had to fundraise for it. I could not afford to pay for all the instruments myself, but it was an idea. So, like you're saying, there's so many ways that you can do this, right? Another thing we have in common, sound. So I used to be a recording engineer. That was my
mm.
my job. So, and you do your your youth group. So
I
that's
I
awesome.
wouldn't call I wouldn't call myself an engineer. It's so funny. I know enough to get myself in trouble. So but the nice thing is everyone else in my church is very patient about it. One of our worship pastor actually is just a genius with all that. And there's times he'll walk over and just kind of kindly push me out of the way and take over. And then there's times he's up on the mic and one day he goes, Chris, do you know how to change my low frequency on the mic? And I went, I know how to turn you up. So I'm not that good. But no, I
I love
appreciate
that
that.
you're doing all that work in your church. That's amazing. Giving.
Well, but it's giving. And are there times that I get tired? Are there times where I'm just like, I don't know if I can keep going? And and then, something happens where I get refreshed because when we give, when you give much, much will be given to you. And so when you're doing that, one, don't do it out of place of expectation. That gets you back into the vortex. That gets you in, well, okay, if I do this, then I'll get that.
Mm.
That's not necessarily true. And
Or
when you get
people.
stuck in that,
Yeah.
you miss what you were given. And I don't want to miss an opportunity. I don't want to miss what I could be given, even if it's something as simple of someone coming up and saying, "Hey, thanks for running sound today." Like if you hadn't been over there, yeah, we'd have figured it out, but it just takes so much stress off of us. And I mean, for me, it's just fixing a couple switches and I leave it alone. I mean, it's not a big deal. So, yeah, it just don't. I guess my whole point is don't put it on such a pedestal that you get caught in the can't vortex.
Mm.
There is something you can do, like with you. It started as an idea. That's how everything starts. But like Thomas Edison says, some of us don't realize how close we were to success until we gave up. Well, I
Mm.
don't want to do that either. Prince EA has an amazing YouTube video called The Graveyard.
Yes.
What's the richest place on planet Earth? It's the graveyard. Why? Because that's where ideas have gone to die in a very literal sense. Because either A, we were ignored. So, one, folks, don't ignore an idea. Or two, we feel ignored, so we don't speak up. We don't start with the idea. We don't push the project. We don't work on the fundraising. If I could cut a check for everything I was a part of, I would do it.
Mm.
Right now, that's not necessarily the case. So what do? I get my hands dirty in ways I can. One project I did, you said you wanted to talk about different trips I've been a part of.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We had a major tornado in Kansas 10 or so years ago, destroyed a town, and we went a year later to help. I had just had both my knees cut on and cleaned out. I was on crutches for this trip. I mean, I was literally one day from the cutoff of the doctor saying you can't travel, and I was still able to go. I couldn't write a check back then, which that wasn't what we were there to do. I couldn't help rebuild houses. I couldn't cut up trees. What was I able to do? I was able to drive. So I drove water around town to people.
Oh, that's great.
I just drove water around. I checked on people with my first aid background. If there was someone getting dehydrated, if they cut themselves, there were still things I could do even while leaning on crutches.
But Chris, just to stop you for a second, you said I
Yeah.
just drove water around.
Oh, it was more than that. It was hotter than snot that
Didn't
day. It
just
was so bad.
you did something great. So don't put the word just in there, because that makes it small, and it's not a small thing.
Well, no, it's not. And I'm glad you said that, because I mean, that to put it in that perspective, when I say just, like, yes, it was a very strong component of what needed to be done that day. But at the same time, when I say just, I also want to hone in on the fact the just is what your assignment is.
Yeah.
I'm just there to build a house. We had a 90-year-old man with us who ran circles around everybody out there, building a wall that they said couldn't be built. Literally stood there and built a wall that said it couldn't be built with 3 high school boys. He was just there to build a wall. So yeah, when I say just, I don't mean that in a demeaning factor there. So for those of you that are thinking that, or, well, I'm just able to do this, or, well, I can't play an instrument and I can't sing. Okay, learn to run sound, or be the person out in the crowd that's jumping up and down. Be the hype person. Whatever that is. If it's just this, could be one of the biggest, best things that could be done. Because quite honestly, if I hadn't been driving around that water, we might have had way more people dehydrated, because the only people who got dehydrated are the ones refusing to drink the water I brought around. So,
and the only reason I said that was because I used to use the same word with my project. So I was on a podcast and people were like, what do you mean you just brought music?
you brought life.
And then I was thinking, yeah, I made them forget, those kids, that they were hungry for a few hours. It's more than that. So that's why when you said that, it just reminded me. And that's why I had to point it out, because sometimes we think the things that we do are so trivial, but to the person that's thirsty and is about to have a heat stroke and can't continue, you were a lifesaver. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that was good. I'm glad you did, because I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. So for any of you that are out there using just, throw it out, kind of like can't. Throw it out. You are doing more than could ever be done, because if I hadn't done it, I don't know that anyone else would have. And I saved, now I'm starting to tally up the points on this, saved people from having to leave the project to go get water. And some of it was water given to people who didn't have any water. They didn't bring any with them, or didn't bring enough with them. And we had a surplus that we were able to use from to help out project workers, to help out those that still lived there, those that were in need. And so, yeah, thank you. I'm actually,
and water is
totally change that sermon.
Yeah, because water is life. Because bringing that water, like, I'm just thinking of the heat and the work and the 90-year-old man, and honestly, like, maybe it wouldn't have gone as far as it did if people couldn't have continued. So thank you.
Good point. See, that's what happens. So yeah, but it's also, to kind of stick with the just thing. Another mission trip we did was, I just forgot the name of the project. It's a shoe project, but they don't just take in donations of shoes. They actually take them over to third world countries, and they set up a shop. And before anyone thinks, oh, so wait a minute, they're taking used shoes and selling them over there, making money. No. They set up a shop and teach others how to become entrepreneurs, their local community. The missionaries that are there are not doing it to make money for themselves. They can do plenty of that over here, where we are fortunate enough to have the resources we do. They actually go teach them. And they not only do that with the shoes, they take the shoes. And what our job was, and what we did for 4 days, was separate them. They had bins. There was an A, B, C, D bin. Grade A was basically said, this shoe's still practically brand new. It's just got some grass stains on it. Kid outgrew it, or I don't know, maybe didn't like the shoe and just wanted it gone. And yeah. B was, it's a little roughed up. There's no holes in it. C was, this pair of shoes probably got a good couple months on it. And then D was, we just got to get rid of them. They're just, they'd be better off barefoot still, if that's the case of how they're walking. But they take those over there. So not only are they providing a resource of a product, it's so much more than that. It's a ministry. It teaches entrepreneurship. They actually have to run the shop.
Mm.
And they don't just go, okay, here, put the grade A's in this amount of dollar pile and the grade B's in this one. No, it's here's how you track your revenue. Here's how you determine what the quality of the shoe is. Here's, if you've got someone that's really got to barter with you, or you've got someone who, they just don't have the money but need the shoe. Here's how you handle this. But it continues that giving spirit.
Great.
And so, and this was with high school, middle school youth groups ages. And, when we first walked in there, I know the thought, I don't remember if anyone said it, but it's like, this is what we're going to do for a week. We're just going to separate shoes. And not even thinking about it from the perspective of, well, one, they're always relying on volunteers because it's a nonprofit. So it's not like they have 100 employees to separate the shoes. The employees they have to be working with the missionaries that are out in the field. They've got to be seeing where the shoes are going to go. They got to make sure things are being done correctly. So not only are we saving them all of that, we're also getting something done. And so to help keep a positive attitude, I turned it into a competition. I asked the organizer, I said, hey, I got a question for you. And they said, what's that? I said, what's the biggest amount of boxes done in one day? And they looked at me and said, I said, you keep a tally somewhere. Don't tell me you don't, because I know I'm not the only one that's thought of this. And one of the gentlemen started laughing. He goes, no, you're not the only one. He goes, the record is, I don't remember what to say, 11. I said, I bet we do 14. Whatever. I shot it up there and told the kids, I pulled them aside. I said, you guys know what you're doing? Yeah. I said, okay. I said, I just threw down the gauntlet. They said, what's that? I said, we're gonna push so hard, we're gonna beat the record by 4 or 5 boxes. The kids surpassed that. They actually beat what I said. But the thing is, and these were kids I didn't even know. The group that we were with, it actually mixed up the entire mission group. So we were from all different states, and then they basically put you in a hat, shook up the names, and said, okay, you got to have the right amount of adults to student ratio. But I had kids from different states in my group. My kids didn't necessarily go with me. And we turned it into this competition. But the joy of it was they all had such a giving spirit. It wasn't just about beating the record. It was about seeing how much of this can we clear out so they can bring in the next set, so more can be done. How much more can we do so more outside of us can get done?
And someone had that idea, and I'm thinking of all the other ways too that project helped the kids themselves. Like, we know that it helped the people that the shoes were going to, but the kids got to learn how to work together. They got to learn how to put their own, thoughts and feelings aside for the good of other people. They learned that, hey, maybe I have an idea. If 10% of those kids came up with their own idea because of that project, that's change, dude. Like, that's, it's so many, you can learn so many things. It is definitely number one about the people that you're helping. But
oh yeah,
you open up your heart and your mind, you can learn so much. Like you were saying earlier about how, you can also get benefits. It's not just, it can help in so many ways. Honestly, it's just, and I know a leader really helped you growing up. And it takes that 1 or 2 people to trust in and to let them guide you. You know what I mean? Because I know that made an impact for you as well growing up, and probably why you were in the Scouts and, are now such a great leader, and you're such an inspiration to so many people, but somebody was there for you. And just like that, you're there for them. So the things that they can do based on that experience are countless, right?
yeah. And it just, like, I say this term loosely about count your blessings, because again, I don't want to get trapped in that vortex. I keep saying that a lot, but the reason for that is you know when we give and we give of ourselves, again, I don't want to give out of obligation. I want to give just because I can, but at the same time, I also don't want to forget the blessings that I've had, even the simplest of ones, because sometimes that becomes our why. I mean, part of the reason why my wife and I created Eagle Fire Enrichment was to help other leaders get through the obstacles and the struggles that they have based on what we've gone through. If I even just help just one person by giving to them and helping them, even just one person, and they go out and help 10, who go out and help 100, who go out and help 1,000, live a better life, or to get through their struggle faster. Doesn't mean, when I say help, I'm not saying like I'm just going to hold your hand and just say, okay, here's how this is done. No, it's going to be a learnable, teachable moment. That's what I love about working with youth, is things are so moldable and coachable when we give. And when adults do the same thing, the results and the possibilities are endless. And so to be able to take like what we're doing in our company and how we guide people, we know that they can go out and guide others well, just as what was done for us. That Boy Scout leader who looked at me and said, you need to throw all that out the window. First and foremost, I did not change right in that instant. It's taken more. So yes, he was the start. And I don't even have contact with him really anymore. Not like I did back then. But I also have known other people who have still continued to pour into me, which gives me the chance to pour out. And I just think that's why giving is loving. It's what you're called to do.
Thank you, Chris. Because, honestly, a huge thing for me for giving is giving hope. And that doesn't have to cost anything either. There's so many people around the world that don't have hope, that don't have any reason to get up in the morning, and if we could convince and show them that every single life is important. And I love when you talked about giving them the skill of running their own, their entrepreneurship with the shoe project, because from there they can now tend to a shop or start a shop, or there's so many things involved in that teaching of that entrepreneurship. And you were saying how to run the books and how to just organize things, and so many lessons in there. One thing I learned from going on my trip to Guatemala is I was told over and over and over by the people, the Mayan families there that I met, and the one thing they kept telling us was, we don't want people to come and give money. We want people to come from Canada and the States and Australia and England and teach us.
Yes.
Teach us the skills we need to keep our farms. Teach us the skills we need to use a computer. Teach us these things so that we can sustain, I mean, money is great and things don't happen without any money. But I love that the skills they learned during that project. I think that is so important. And nothing makes somebody feel worth something when they feel worthless, that they have a skill, they have something to contribute. So that project is great for so many reasons. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah. Well, and I even look at my trip to the Bahamas that I took with school. I actually didn't even know about it. It was through the art therapy program, which I was not a major in. I was in clinical psychology and actually getting ready to switch to industrial organizational psychology, which is more business psychology. And I just happened to be chatting with a friend who knew my background in the church, knew my background in missions, and understood my leadership abilities, and said, you know what, I really think you need to come talk to the professor and just see if you're allowed to go or not. And so I was like, well, okay, why not? I mean, it's the Bahamas and I get to help people. That's pretty
Win-win, right?
Yeah, that's a win-win. And so I went and we met with the professor. And after we kind of talked, she said, you know what? She goes, if you can find a way to make it work, you can join the class. I'll approve it. Let's go. And so we went, and I got to take Bradley, my oldest son, with me. And so a lot of people, when they picture the Bahamas, they immediately picture the resorts and the beaches. Okay, well, that's just a small part of the entire area. And what was amazing about this trip, yes, we got to go enjoy the resort life too, but we also were taken to a quote unquote supermarket, and we're given a certain amount of money to spend on some food. Beef over there is 2 to 3 times what it cost over here. Milk, for those you don't know, I'm in Kansas. Milk was like $8, $9 a gallon, if not more.
Wow.
It's like $2 over here, I think. I can't remember. I haven't had to buy it for a couple days, but and this was 10 years ago. And so, so we got to experience that. And then after we did that, they drove us through one of the lowest income neighborhoods. And to get water, they have to walk down to the corner and get it from a dirty pipe that's hooked up in the street like a fire hydrant, so to speak, and then carry it back home, which that's a blessing because even a couple years before that, they didn't even have that. And we drove through this neighborhood and it was a whole nother world compared to what I was used to seeing. And so for me, and this was aside from what we were already doing, I'll get to that here in a minute. But for me, it was just an eye opener because if you Google the Bahamas, you don't see the hill. It was called the Hill. When you see commercials, when you see Nassau, which is where we were, you see the shopping district. You see where the restaurants are. You don't get to interact with the people. You don't get to interact with the culture. You don't get to see the areas that are in the most need because you're only picturing the sandy white beaches. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the things we've been given. But again, we got a chance to give back. And so what we were actually there to do was we worked with their physical disabilities department, and the place we actually went to was children with cerebral palsy. And our art therapy program, what we put together, we actually, as a class, we were there for 2 weeks, Monday through Friday. We had to put together art projects that they would be able to do. Now, the idea that came from this was another professor, who the two professors are best friends. But the one that wasn't with our school directly had been down there, had gone to work there to do some mission project. And when they went to this facility, they don't have all the resources we do here. And one of the kids had no functional use of his hands and arms. And she did notice, however, though, how good he was with his feet. So she's an art person. She stuck it may have been a paintbrush, a marker, I don't remember for sure, in between his toes. And he started to color and draw. Had never drawn a picture before. And the thing is, it wasn't just some scribbles on a page. He was doing shapes that they didn't even know he understood because he also had, cognitive disability as well. And so she got a hold of the other professor, said, "Hey, what do you think about putting together one of your groups and coming down here?" And we did some of the simplest of things, just brought coloring books. Okay. It was so much more than that. And here's the thing, I'm not an art person. I am not artistic at all. And the professor looked at me and said, "You're more artistic than you realize." And actually showed me different things through art therapy of why it's so important. So then not only was I poured into by taking this class, we got to go pour it back out. This young person, after the original showing that he could draw, I got to meet him. And he drew Bradley a car. There's the thing. I just said I'm not artistic. I have full function. He can draw a car better than I can with his feet, having to look down at the floor from a seated position. He drew a car for my son. And then we even took the old you do the rocket on a string with a 2-liter bottle of pop. If you don't know what that is, you just have both ends are open, you stick a string through it or 2 strings through it, and you pull from one end to the other, and when the strings separate, it sends the bottle across. Well, there was one student who was completely bedridden, and was they didn't know how much true cognition was there. And so we zipped the bottle across the crib that they laid in all day long. And the child knew what was going on. That bottle zipped across, and the joy that came across this child's face was just unreal. And it was just 2 strings in a 2 liter, empty 2 liter bottle of pop that most of us throw away. We while we were there, we actually met someone who was a breathing therapist, for lack of a better term. And with some of the positions that these kids have to lay in, and because they don't have all the access to like a breathing therapist, respiratory therapist, there was a wedge that we were using as a ramp for bowling.
Okay.
For the kids my son would hold the ball at the top of the ramp, and they would be able to come up in their wheelchairs and hit it with their feet or with their hand, whatever they could, and knock down the pins. Well, the respiratory therapist came in. He goes, just so you guys know, that's not a ramp. He goes, this is supposed to go under people who are bedridden, because they didn't have, the bed lifts that a hospital uses. And so we were able to pick up the student, or the child that was laid down flat all day long, and sit this child up using the ramp that we were using for bowling.
Right.
No one knew. None of us knew. And he came just out of the giving of his heart. We met him on the beach, and our professors just got to chatting with him. He had a pair of goggles, and let Bradley go swim over to a little reef using his goggles and get to see the different fish under the water. But he had this giving heart, this giving spirit. And our professors were telling him what we were doing. He goes, well, we're here for a couple of days, and he goes, I'm done. He goes, we were down here just to screw around for a couple of days because we can afford to do so. He goes, no. He goes, we're going to do more. He goes, what do I need to do to get involved and come help out? Because he knew, because what he did medically, professionally, he knew what could be done. And so we went, and he toured the facility and said, just so you know, you already have what you need. This is how you use it. So we were able to educate the workers that were there, and then they got involved, and their joy in the giving of what they were doing changed. I mean, they were up and helping with the rockets and the coloring and the stickers and singing songs, and we were doing different dances, and we taught them different songs that had hand and feet motions, clapping motions, and things like that. And just the whole time, not only are you, yes, you're in this beautiful paradise, but you're also impacting their community at the same time. And then they took us to all the local businesses where we could truly be involved with the community and just give back to a place that, again, normally everyone just sees the resorts. They see Atlantis. They see the water, they see being able to go out on the boat, and just a few blocks inland, there's places where they don't have, they're not even able to go to the ocean, and they live there. And here we were, just a simple thing of propping a kid up in bed on a wedge that we thought was just a toy. It wasn't. It was an actual piece of equipment. It was just a foam wedge. Got that under that child, and they were able to sit up and see more of what was going on, not just looking back and forth trying to find out what was going on. But because of another student seeing an ability in me and saying, I think you would benefit from this, I think they would benefit from you being there, we got to go. And then I was given the opportunity. They brought in local government officials. They brought in the local newspaper, wrote up a full article on what we were doing, and it brought more awareness to what can be done and what could be done. Because there was still so much in the time we were there. I mean, even just meeting that respiratory therapist for a couple of days, he was only able to come for a couple of hours, but that couple of hours changed so many things and brought so much awareness to them. And if we would only have been there for just the paradise feel of it, I wouldn't have this story. I wouldn't have this opportunity. I also wouldn't be able to take the things that I learned. I've reapplied that now here in the States. I've reapplied that in other places I've gone where people say, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. Well, do you drink pop? Yeah. Do you drink it out of a 2 liter or a plastic bottle? Yeah. Do you have some string? Yeah. Watch this.
Mm.
So it's it's the simplicity of I couldn't write a check for what they needed down there to bring in the extra professionals that need to be brought in, but I could show them different ways of doing things. I could help out for a week. I mean, we also alleviated caretaker stress,
Hmm.
just like we did at the shoe project. Instead of the person who's supposed to be setting up more businesses and setting up the missionaries that are out there, instead of that person spending 8 hours of the day separating shoes, we were able to alleviate that. And so when we can give, when we can set up these projects, we're fulfilled, others are fulfilled, and the world just becomes a better place. And that's not some optimistic cheerleader, rah rah ree dream or speech. That's reality. It's a true smile of the heart.
Oh, Chris, there are so many things about that story I could talk about. Um, you know, thank you for doing all of that, and it just, I don't know, it's things like that. I love talking about it. It fills my heart, right? Because with hope too, for so many things. But even just starting with the child, with CP and the drawing with his feet, um, not only was he able to do something so beautiful, but he could express himself.
Absolutely.
It's like, I think sometimes there are so many people who have medical conditions that just want to express themselves and show what they can do and their feelings. And just based on, even if he hadn't been a good artist, just the fact that he could show through the colors and the shapes and everything, how he was feeling. Um, that is huge. I can't imagine being in a body where you cannot express yourself. So just that story, I was like, it just, oh, I'm telling you, sorry, I'm led by my heart all the time and I can't hold it in, but okay. So no need to apologize for that, right?
No.
But when you were talking about that, because I know people in that situation, just to be able to express yourself, crazy. And the wedge, the elevation, it's just like, I matter. Like that
Mhm.
child who was lying down.
Mhm.
These people, here I am day after day, and here comes somebody with a new idea. It doesn't mean that, you guys came up with this very expensive lift that could help him get up. It was the idea of using things in different ways. Use
Mhm.
what you have available. And just those stories, they mean so much just to listen to them. I can't imagine what it was like being there for you. Um, yeah, it's just so important that we learn from each other's stories, because somebody will take something away from what you just said and say, hey, I have an idea. There's somebody down the road for me. There's somebody, or even people who, people who make these commercials for Atlantis, and people who, are in the tourism industry. Why not advertise, come to Atlantis, and the money you spend here on tourism, this is where it's going?
Mhm.
And show both sides. Don't hide those things. You know, come, but in the same time, you're impacting this community 3 blocks down the road by coming and spending money in Bahamas. Come and stay at the beach, but this is what your money is, and maybe
Right.
those companies can take part of that and make a change a few blocks down the road. Like, there's so many things that can be done. I
Yeah.
don't think that would distract from people going to these places. I think that people would be like, hey, yeah, I want to support this cause. If I go to this place in the Bahamas as opposed to this place, I know that this hotel will give back part of what I'm spending, as opposed to that. Why not put that in the industry as well? Like, there's just so many things that can be done. So I really, really, I'm excited to hear those stories. Thank you for sharing them with me.
Yeah. Well, it just that started reminding me of another one that we went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we were in an area that just impoverished.
Mm.
And they sent us to it was a soup kitchen, and the workers there were overworked, and the people coming in, some had an attitude of gratitude, some just had an attitude, and so um, but we set things up in such a fashion. I have a restaurant background, and I saw how they were doing some things, and I said, hey, I said, I'm not trying to take over because I'm only here for like a couple days. I'm the outsider, so to speak. I said, but do you mind if I offer a couple suggestions that I personally think might speed some things up? And they're like, we're all ears. And so I took an experience that I had and turned it into a nuance for them. And I said, if you just switch, it was a couple things, I don't remember what it was, but it was simple. I said, and then you set up this person over here, because what I started to do, and this is what I do in leadership, is find what people's strengths are. If my strength is in being able to write a check, then I'll write the check. There's nothing wrong with that. If my strength is in being able to use my hands or my mind or a shovel or knowing how to operate machinery, or driving around a van full of water, creating art projects, whatever your strength is, expose those, work on those. Well, I noticed they had one person, I saw them, they had them prepping the vegetables, cutting them up, things like that to make vegetable stew, I think it was. And this person was really pretty slow at it. And it seems like such a simple task, but I don't know if they were afraid of, to cut themselves or what maybe their hands don't allow that function. And then I saw one person run over and go, we got to get caught up. And they grabbed the vegetables and just went to town on it. And I was like, well, why is that person
Let's change.
over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just, and I switched like two people, and I moved a couple things here and there, and it worked. Thank God it worked, because I was like, man, if I just messed it up, I would feel horrible. But at the same time, too, it was also kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't think I could make this worse. Not that it was bad,
Yes.
but just that trepidation that, well, if this doesn't work, I could mess it all up. But I didn't. But because we did that, it sped things up so fast in the kitchen that we were done. And our coordinator,
Yeah.
well, we still had hours to go, and the coordinator came over to me and said, I don't know what to do with you. I'm like, you're not the first person to tell me that. Uh, Poor
Okay.
wife. Anyways, but I said, what else do you guys need? What needs to be done here around here? They said, well, a while back, someone had an idea to create a vegetable garden and a tree orchard, apple orchard, up on top of the hill out there. But it kind of became overgrown. We had some tools donated to us, but some of us don't know how to use them. And it was something as simple as, and I say simple, I don't mean that disrespectfully, as a weed eater. For me, that's pretty simple. I'm used to using things like that. But they didn't know how to run it. Because the one person who did moved, left, something I can't remember. And so let's do a couple things. So one, let me teach you guys how to use it.
Mm.
Two, I'm wearing pants tomorrow. They said, what do you mean? I said, I'm gonna put on jeans because I'm gonna need them, because the grass itself was 4 feet tall in there.
Wow.
They couldn't even get to the vegetables, and it was all growing, but they'd have to crawl over it. It, they didn't have the time. Then they also, down towards the bottom of the hill, because they were letting the watershed come down the hill, they also had box gardens. Well, we had some that weren't able to use a weed eater. We had some that could, but we also had some that we actually had a lady with us, elderly lady, who worked as hard as all get out. She had a heart of gold. And as soon as she found out, which she loved gardening, she had the green thumb. I don't. I'm good at tearing it down. Um, she goes, I know how to fix this. I
Oh.
said, okay. So myself and a couple of older people, older adults and kids, went up and started just going to town on the tree orchard, getting it cleaned out. Well, I couldn't stop there. The whole hill needed cleaned up. So we cleaned up the whole hill. And then while we were doing that, those that liked being at the box gardens stayed down at the raised box gardens and cleaned those out and then showed them, here's the best way to keep the weeds down. Here's the type of stuff that if you have access to it, and they're like, well, yeah, we can get this. She goes, that's all you need. They already had irrigation run to it, but it wasn't working right. So we fixed that. So, and that was just a couple of days. But if we didn't have that giver's heart, that giver's spirit, that may never have been done. So it's just another example of what we can do. I know this is my story. To everyone listening, I know this is my story. I'm not the only one. Don't let me sound like I'm just, this is not narcissism. I'm not being selfish in this. I'm saying this so you will understand we are all gifted. We all have talents. We all have treasures we've been given that we can give back, and some. And so, and when we can do that, like I said, it's just these simple things of someone else saw that hope and realized, ooh, I can take care of that. Yeah, I was in charge of grilling the meat, but found out I was faster at cutting carrots. So what do? We just switch those two. So don't let your ideas get shed away, or don't be the person that tries to shed those ideas away. But at the same time, have this heart set to helping others. And if you're sitting here going, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I can help. You know what? There's always Google. There's always your local churches, local charities, food kitchens, soup kitchens, clothing donation centers. You know, or what are you passionate about? Nelia, what are you passionate about? What do you love?
I want people to be seen. For me, yeah, it is music, but I want people to feel like they're not invisible. That's my thing.
And so what's Nelia doing? She creates a podcast out of her heart to give back. This is time, folks. And she's having to step out of her box and be a leader and ask people to come on to her podcast. And then she's got to edit it. And then she's got to put it out there. And then she's got to be on social media. This is all her time. She's got the ukulele project where she said herself, she didn't necessarily have all the money for the instruments. So what did she do? She started fundraising and she went down there and they taught it. And so now you've got people who not only get to hear music, but get to play it. They get to be a part of it. Okay. I've been a part of projects where now they know that you don't have to go to the store and buy coloring books. If you've got boxes, which they did, they had boxes. I was like, hey, you've got scissors, you've got boxes, you've got crayons, cut the boxes up. There's your paper.
Beautiful.
I've got someone sitting right over here drinking out of a 2-liter bottle of pop. I know you can find some string. It can be done. Okay, yes, there are those out there that are just doing these multi-million, billion-dollar projects. And in some cases, we're able to send some money that way and help out with that. But even those projects started with just an idea. It started with someone going, you know what, I am passionate about people having clean water. But we're not able to get bottled water from the store over here. So what do? We build a canister that creates a natural filtration system that they can build themselves. So not only are we going to be able to get these materials here, they already have them, and now they're going to be able to do it themselves and teach the next generation how to have clean water. All filtering it through sand and dirt and some other things that they have access to. And now they can build it themselves and train the next generation. Now this entire village, this entire community has clean water. Whatever your it is, get started. Even if it's the smallest idea, get started.
Chris, you're amazing. You know, honestly, and I'm thinking back to what you said about the vegetables, sometimes these are things that are common sense to us here in Canada and the States, and
yeah.
But if you don't know what your gift is, just, what, even without an idea, I challenge people to go to a third world country. As soon as you arrive there, you will see what is needed. Within an hour of you arriving there, you will be touched by so many different people. You will see what is lacking. You will see the big things, but you will also see the small things that you can do. And your gifts will become apparent just like that.
Absolutely. And it'll shine. It'll shine because again, my hope in this and the hope that I want to share the light is that you'll do it from the heart.
Mm.
Don't do it out of that vortex of, well, I have to do something because Chris is doing something or Nelly is doing something. Do it from your heart. I'm not saying don't go do anything just because we said to do it.
Yes.
What I'm saying is do it from the heart. When it's something you're passionate about and it's something you know you can do, that's going to open up the door. That's going to open up the opportunity. That's going to be the baby step leading to a giant leap. I'm not an artist. That professor actually finally set me down and gave me a mandala and stuck a crown in front of me and said, start coloring. I honestly didn't want to. I was like, no, I'm just here to this. And no, you're not. You want to pass this class, you want to go to the Bahamas, you're going to color.
Mm.
And I said, well, okay. So I kind of started to color it and I was being really careful and trying to stay in the lines and be exact. And she goes, is that how you color? No. She goes, color it. And I just went to town on this thing. She goes, okay. She goes, now I know where you're at. She goes, let me guess. When you were a kid, you were told you have to color in the lines. You have to fill out the whole sheet of paper. I said, oh, yeah. I used to get in trouble all the time as a kid in school because when I colored the sky at the top of the page because the sky is at the top of the world. I didn't see it from my artistic view of kind of the panoramic view of filling in the rest of the background of the sky. The sky's just at the top. And but they would force me to do it. You've got to fill in the rest of your picture blue because that's the rest of the skies. No, the sky's up above us. That was what I was, and no idea how many times I've heard that. So she goes, okay, guys, time out. She goes, Chris doesn't fully understand what art therapy is. I didn't. Of course, I got laughed at because I was the only one in there that didn't. And she gave us all three mandalas. For you guys don't know what a mandala is, it's a bunch of geometric shapes put together for the sake of description, kind of like a flower. But you can color it however you want, and it can be very therapeutic. So, but she gave us three of them, and then gave us a box of crowns. And the assignment was one page had to be something in coloring. You had to picture something that made you happy.
Mm.
You had to picture something that made you angry and something that made you sad.
Mm.
So we spent our time coloring, and she said, okay, push the tables away, go sit on the floor. And she took all of them, basically shuffled the pieces of paper like a deck of cards, turned them upside down, and picked one over and said, whose is this? And ironically enough, it was mine. And it was my angry one. And I just sat there and went, how'd you guys know that? And they said, Chris, that's totally you. So we flipped over another one, and it was someone else, and it was their happy one. Out of the 7 or 8 students, I'd have to recount later, but we only missed 2. We missed 2. And so then now I had this whole new perspective on what art is. So when I went to the Bahamas to work with the kids and the staff, and we got to see that expression, it wasn't just that young man. There were so many other kids that, I mean, we brought coloring books that they had never seen before. And we were able to teach from that. And then they were able to express themselves in ways that we would have never have known. Music's the same way. We have different styles of music because we have different stories in our lives. We have different meanings to different things, different impact. I'm not a guitar player. I do want to learn the ukulele though. But that's not necessarily my gift. So what my gifts are my strengths. And so go out and find those and get passionate about them and take it to the world. We will make this world a better place. And it starts simplistically with an idea of, you know what? I like this. You're not going to be the only one. I promise you, there's 8 billion people in the world. You're not going to be the only one. There's a reason why we have multiple things in the world to pick from, because we're not the only ones. I mean, go to the store, look how many different bottles of ranch there are.
Mm.
Okay. We are a diversified culture that can learn to work together. And honestly, and I'm just going to steal the title of the show, giving starts with you.
Chris, I know I've said this so many times, but you are, I don't know, you're just incredible. Like, just the feeling on my face, maybe you can see how much I enjoy this. But, thank you for everything that you're doing with your work and all these stories that you express to us, and for taking all of your heart and putting it into your coaching business. Because as you guys can tell by watching him and listening to him, he's passionate about what he does. He does not waste time doing things he does not enjoy. Life is just so short. And, I just wanted to share with the audience as well that there's so many, yes, the benefits of giving. There are so many that benefit other people. But I also just did a little reminder card that I created about all the benefits for yourself that you get back. So if anybody wants a copy of that, you can just email me at info@travel-live-give, and I'll happily send it to you. There are many benefits that you may not realize for yourself. And this is one of the things that connected me with giving back. Honestly, when I first started a few years ago, it was a selfish thing. I did it because it made me feel worth something. So sometimes it can be that for me as well, honestly, because
Oh
it
yeah.
helps me as well as the other person. So that's why I created that guide, because I do want people to see that it changes others, but like Chris and I were talking about, it helps anger issues. It helps so many things for yourself as well. Everybody wins. Honestly, there is nothing negative about
No.
giving back unless you do it because you have to. And that's, one point that Chris made so well, because it's so true. And nobody should give out of, the feeling that you have to, right? Because it's not giving at that point. It really isn't. Chris, where can we find you? Where can we check out your leadership? I know that you just had a summit a little while ago, and you were just speaking. You had a challenge on Facebook, and I was a part of that, and I learned so much from you. I think that you've got a lot of great leadership qualities that you can definitely teach people. And you're so
Thank you.
humble in what you do, but honestly, you are fantastic. So if people want to work with you, learn from you, just listen to more stories, where can they find you, Chris?
My primary driver is social media. So Instagram at Tice Inspires, or LinkedIn is just my name, Chris Tice, or Facebook, Chris Tice. Those will probably be the fastest ways to get to me. And then, of course, I have my Eagle Fire pages as well. But if you just go to those personal pages, you can link in from anywhere there. I'll be continuing to do challenges and summits and speaking engagements as they come up. I do in-person where allowed and where it can be safely done, given for those of you that aren't listening currently, we're still a part of the COVID pandemic right now, and of course virtual. Yeah, so just look up my name and connect with me. Send me a message if you're struggling. Let me know. We can set up something beyond that, or just to hear, yeah, like Nelly said, just to hear the stories, just to hear the messages. I mean, the reason why my username for Instagram is at Tice Inspires, that's what I'm here to do. I want to create a positive influence for massive impact so everyone will live inspired, healthier lifestyles.
Yeah, I don't have people on the show that I don't know that the listeners cannot learn from. And I don't have people on the show that I don't believe in, and I don't believe in their message. And I've had Chris on now twice. So that tells you how much I love him and what he's doing. Yeah, for lack of a better word, I so appreciate you. And I am so happy that you came on. I think, people are really going to listen to this today and realize, hey, I can do this. I can do this. This is how simple it could be. This is how something as easy as changing people's roles, you know, like the gentleman that was cutting, the person that was cutting the vegetables, how things can be so much more streamlined. And the gifts that we have, we don't notice until we're outside of our element and we go into
Mm,
societies and into communities that don't have that. And it's so clear. And it's like, why didn't they think of this? So they need people like you and to come in and teach the skills, you know, so that, like, imagine that garden that you helped with. Like, it's not just cleaning out the grass and clearing out the area like we were
mhm.
talking about, right? And it's probably a thriving garden. And so
Yeah.
many people have a purpose now. They go there, they build, they can see things growing, they can feed. Like, it just, you know, okay, so get a sheet of paper, write down an activity in the middle. Okay. And around that, think of all of the things that have been affected. Even like with with his stories, if you haven't had a project yourself. So even this garden, you can probably name 20 things easily that have been
Mhm.
affected since they were able to pull up their sleeves and clean out that area. How many things can you list that have changed because of that one thing? You know, think about that. Think about the impact. As givers, we don't normally see the impact down the road. We do our thing, we leave, we move on to the next thing. Because we don't live there, we don't see it, but you can imagine it. You
Oh
can
yeah.
imagine the things that happen. And the more you do it, the more you have to do it. It becomes a part of who you are. And it just, you can't see your life without it, you know?
Well, and you know what? If we want to talk simplistically, and folks, I'm not just talking about this episode. Share this podcast. Share Nelia. Share her content. She's giving of herself and her heart in this. And I mean, I've listened to every episode,
Yes,
and
he has.
not just because I've been on here, but because of the incredible stories and people. And here's the thing, folks: she's worldwide. She's had Canada, the States, the UK, Australia. You
Singapore.
know, so yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and it started with a simple idea of, okay, what can I do? What can I do? Because you can do something. Share this episode, share the other episodes, go back and listen to them all, because you never know if this episode specifically may not reach you exactly the way you think it does, but maybe others do. Share them anyways, because there could be that other person who does, or that other person who's struggling. Maybe it's as simple as smiling every time you go to the store, even when you don't want to. Giving the person at the register a smile, I promise you, can change their life. And that's simple and it's free. It's a smile.
Giving, yeah, it can be free. And you know, I made this show not about me, and you're right, Chris. It is so, every single person that I have had on, I have heard feedback of people who have been helped. Whether it's somebody who's suffered abuse or addiction, there's so
Mm,
many different things that we talk about here. And honestly, at the end of the day, I just want people to feel that they're validated, that people are listening to them, that they're not invisible, that they're being heard. So I do appreciate you listening, you know, and you are one of my biggest supporters. So thank you so much for
mm,
all the kind things that you said. I really appreciate it. And yes, if you guys share it, you know, other people can be impacted by the guests on here, because they are amazing and phenomenal. And it's not easy. It's not easy to come on a show and talk about some of the things that people talk about when they come on here. It is not easy to admit things. It is not easy to admit when we are wrong. It is not easy to admit that we have issues. We all have problems, you know. It's not easy to tell some of these stories. And I'm so honored that people have come on here and have trusted the show enough to be able to be vulnerable and to speak from the heart, because every single person I have had on has been that way. So
mm.
thank you, Chris, so much for coming on. And going to continue to support you as much as I can. If there's anything you need, you let me know, okay?
Likewise, thank you for being the incredible leader that you are
Oh, you're sweet.
in what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I learned a lot. Can't wait to connect with you again.
Absolutely. Anytime. Let me know.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe or leave a review. See you next week on the Giving Starts With You podcast.